project on the screen while the doctor's doing the procedure, and you can move from questioning where the margins of the cancer are to actually seeing where those margins are. This visualization system, we think, will greatly reduce the cancer returning and the reoccurrence rates. And the bladder cancer has reoccurrence rates of somewhere in the neighborhood of over 50%. So that's what we're all about right now, and then we will expand into many other areas in minimally invasive surgery.
Great. Next, Olian of Desert Mountain Energy.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming by today. Basically, Desert Mountain Energy is a junior resource company that's exploring for helium resources in Arizona's Holbrook Basin, which is one of the world's proven best addresses for helium production. Helium in recent years has developed many new applications in the high-tech industry. For example, it's being used to cool the computers in all the big data centers by companies like Google, Facebook, Netflix, and so on. It's been being used in semiconductors by Intel. And there is a big helium shortage going on in the world right now, with growth in helium demand approximately 6 to 7% a year, yet there's a 20% decline in available supplies being projected over the next 4 years. So the result of this was prices more than doubled in the last year for helium, and I don't see any lid on that price increase. Looking out the next 5 to 10 years, I think we're going to be showing much, much higher helium prices. We're exploring, we're going to be drilling the first half of 2019.
Great. Paul McKenzie of NexOptic Technology.
Thanks, Chris. Good morning, everybody. NexOptic is an innovative lens and imaging and company. And as a species, we're expected to take 1.2 trillion photographs this year, which is pretty remarkable number. And the optics industry is growing at about 20% a year. So if you look at usages, there's 3 lens stacks, for example, now in most smartphones, where there was traditionally just one. And automobiles are moving to, it's going to be standardized for reverse cameras, just another example. Security systems, drone imagery, and so forth. So it's a rapidly growing industry. It's something that we are more used to. We all have cameras with us every single day. And we design some of the most innovative lens structures ever created. We managed to create a 1-to-1 depth to aperture ratio lens, which is unprecedented. So I can take a telescope, which would be the length of my leg, and we can crush it down to about the size of a toaster. So quite significant. We also have created remarkable artificial intelligence for photography, and this is used to correct images that are taken in difficult lighting situations, and reduces motion blur, and significantly enhances the ability to take photographs and make them very good photographs. And we've also designed a lens for the smartphone industry, which has outperformed the current leading smartphone lens. So we're an innovative group doing remarkable stuff, and we have a remarkable team of talented people. Thank you.
All right. Josh Gilmore is Vice President of SDIRA Wealth.
Hi everyone, I'm Josh Gilmore, Vice President. We are SDIRA Wealth. We offer a full service solution for retirement accounts and outside funds that offers you immediate income, and it's designed to help you diversify away from the stock market. Can be done with an IRA. You get all the benefits of owning real estate as the vehicle, where you take title, you get the cash flow appreciation and tax savings. But our company uses our 30 years experience to take everything else out of the equation for you, where you never have to deal with tenants or toilets or expenses. And we have it set up in a way where there's 2 levels of management, both on-site and in-house, to keep this really as passive as a stock portfolio, but giving our clients that benefit of immediate income and tangible hedge against inflation, all done within the tax shelter of an IRA or a 401k, where you can get away from
gold, silver, copper specifically. With that said, our first project, which will be up and running next year in Bolivia, is not using our technology, which is bioleaching. It's just a standard gravity flotation circuit, but it's key for the cash flow for the company to address projects that we want to do in Ecuador, Peru, Colombia, etc. Our specialty is stabilizing arsenic as a byproduct of the technology. It's commercial technology. We've built 3 plants in the past for other people, and I guess this is our first kick of the can going alone and doing it for our own account. Thanks.
Great. And Bernie Hertel of Emerald Health Therapeutics.
Thanks, Chris. Cannabis is being legalized globally. It's being, the times are changing, and whether it's medical or recreational use, unquestionably, the whole perspective and the legal approach to cannabis is changing. So there's a huge, huge market opportunity as this gets flipped from illegal to legal. Emerald Health Therapeutics has a focus that comes through a life sciences lens in terms of how we view the opportunity. So we're very focused on product innovation. We filed for 17 patents. When we look at the global opportunity, our goal is to develop differentiated, innovative products, and whether we license or joint venture, however we do it, to export, so to speak, that technology, those products around the world. We are focused on growing as well. It's not going to be our primary focus over time, but we have one of the largest facilities in Canada that has the potential, based on current dollars, to be producing a number of hundreds of millions of dollars worth of revenue. So we're positioned right now at an inflection point for significant growth over the next couple of years, basically, every quarter from here on out. And we're well positioned to be one of the leading forces in Canada and potentially internationally. Thank you.
And those of you who were here yesterday remember my secretariat analogy for Emerald. Next is Peter Dasler of CanAlaska Uranium.
Well, good morning, Chris, and thank you for coming along this morning. CanAlaska's junior explorer. We're focused on the Athabasca Basin in Canada, where we have very high-grade uranium deposits. We're there because 10 years ago there began an unprecedented build-out of nuclear power plants around the world, especially in Asia. We've had a 7-year hiatus. That has changed. The uranium price has moved 40% in the last 4 months, and we're seeing the buyers coming into the market and moving that uranium price up. That's generating interest in our company because we have strategic land positions next door to the world's largest uranium mines. We have new discoveries that occurred last year with our partner Cameco. They're the largest miners in Canada, and they have the richest uranium mines in Canada, and they made some very significant discoveries of 5% uranium on our properties. We're expecting that the uranium market will level out around about $50 to $80 a pound price. It's currently pushing $30, up from $18. We've hedged a number of other targets in nickel and copper for our shareholders. We think we have tremendous value, with 31 million shares issued, a $10 million valuation, down from a $40 million valuation prior to Fukushima. We've only issued 9 million shares under $1.65.
Great. And last but not least is Trevor Walker of Frontier Lithium.
Good morning, everyone. Frontier Lithium is a junior explorer listed on the TSX Venture under the ticker FL. We're down here in the south, HLKMN, on the pinks. We are about a $60 million market cap, trading at around 40 cents. We are a company that's transitioning from exploration to development with the aspirations of producing lithium concentrates and perhaps one day lithium salts. Working on what I believe is the best lithium deposit in North America, located in northwestern Ontario. It's wide, it's big, it's open in all directions, and unlike most hard rock sources for lithium, it has very, very low impurities, and that being iron being the worst culprit of impurities, with less than 0.1% iron oxide. That statistically is an outlier, so we're very fortunate at Frontier to be working with such a robust deposit. We completed a pre-feasibility in the spring. Around that time, we were at a high of 85 cents. Again, we're currently trading at 40. The lithium space has softened somewhat since last spring, but we think there's huge opportunity in the market, and in particular Frontier Lithium, because the fundamentals continue to strengthen in the space. The electric vehicles are selling in the Asian markets quite strongly. It's increasing considerably in Europe, and slowly starting to see the sales here in North America. Of course, the slowest market to come to fruition. So again, we think there's huge opportunity. We're at the feasibility level. We need about another 6 months to finalize the technical aspect of our flow sheet. We're optimizing from a civil perspective for the site, right down to water treatment, and again, the concentrator. So we focus thus far on glass makers because there's such low impurities. We can firstly take a staged approach and get into production by producing premium concentrates for basically the Cornings of the world, which is great. Management's got over 30% of the company. Our skin's in the game. We're limiting dilution to the best of our abilities while continuing to move the project forward. But world-class asset, and the intention is to build a mine. I would hope that would occur by 2022, 2023. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Trevor. I think you can all agree that you got something for everybody up here. We've got a wide variety of concepts and industries represented, and Trevor, without even knowing it, segued into a couple of comments that I want to make when he mentioned the pinks. Who knows what that term is? Yes?
That's the pink sheets that you buy Canadian stocks here in U.S.
That's partly true. The history of the pink sheets is, and I can tell you this because I'm old enough to have used them every week, but as a young broker in upstate New York, starting back in the late 1970s, once a week we had delivered to us a sheaf, probably about yay tall, looked like a waitress's order tablet, but larger than a typical one. And these were pink sheets of paper, actually salmon colored, attached together. They were known as the pink sheets. They had nothing to do in those days with Canadian stocks. They were all stocks based in this country that were not traded on a public exchange, be it the New York Exchange, wasn't even NASDAQ really yet, or Philadelphia or what have you. And the most fun to this day I ever have in my life in doing my newsletter is treasure hunting. It's finding a story, finding a company, and in those days it was literally on pink sheets. And you know, back in those days we didn't have the computerized trading and stuff that we have today. And so once a week you got the latest bid and ask quotes for all of these over-the-counter stocks from the prior week. And if you look up the name, if you wanted to do some research on it, it told you where to get that. If you want to enter a trade, you got a hold of a certain broker. It cost you 2 or 3% to get in, 2 or 3% to get out, which is how commissions worked in those days. It was a lot of fun, and you got to uncover a lot of things. These days, you know, we just kind of reflexively use the term pinks, or some call it the gray market, depending on what service you look it up on. And yes, Canadian companies, virtually all of them have a corollary symbol. It doesn't mean they're listed in the U.S. technically, unless they go to the QX or the OTCQB, that type of thing. But they just have a corollary trading symbol. The 5-letter symbol always ends in F. So, but anyway, I want to give you that history because the point of that, and doing treasure hunting and looking for companies on the pink sheets, is that there are things in front of your noses as consumers and investors every day that represent investment ideas, and half the time you don't realize it, it just kind of goes by you. I'm not going to take the time for this now because I want these gentlemen to tell their stories, but if you haven't done it already, go to my YouTube page, and recently I did about a 45-minute video on numerous stories of how, whether in the movies, on the evening news, and whatnot, you can find all different kinds of ideas to invest in. And a lot of those type of ideas are going to lead you to opportunities like you see sitting up here, whether it's environmental issues, whether it's healthcare, no matter what it is. One real quick one is Peter Lynch. Who remembers Peter Lynch? From your neck of the woods, Jim. Peter Lynch, I had the pleasure of listening to him a long time ago, and of course during the 80s and 90s, he was the premier mutual fund manager in the country. And he always told the story of how he made investment decisions. It was simple. His daughter would come home from school, all excited. Dad, Susie has such and such. I want one. That was the genesis of an investment idea. And before he got into a discussion with his daughter of, well, do you really need that? Maybe you should use your own allowance that you've saved up, you know, learn a little bit about budgeting and buy whatever this thing is. That came later. The first thought that crossed his mind is, who makes this crap and are they publicly traded? Because if they were, he wanted to know. Because everybody else's kid was coming home from school saying, Dad, I want this. And it sometimes is no more complicated than that to come up with an investment idea when you see what's popular, when you see what society needs, or so forth. So anyway, for as long as you folks want to indulge us for a little while, again, a couple guys have a plane to catch, so we're not going to stay up here too long. But you've heard, again, the stories of each of these gentlemen. You've got several publicly traded companies, and you've got one private but compelling real estate story that is, as I said yesterday, and introduced Josh, is the most unique one I ever heard. I never heard of being able to use leverage, even in an IRA, to make a good real estate investment a better one. So anyway, who has questions for one or more of these gentlemen? The cricket. Well, then I'm going to be a shill for a minute, and I want to start down at the other end with Trevor Walker, because Frontier Lithium, you've been coming to the show how long?
Well, the company, Richard would have to answer that one. The company had a previous name at HLM, Houston Lake Mining, so likely started in the early 2000s. My first show, I started in the company in 2010, so early 2010 myself, basically, and have come almost every year since then. I think I missed last year and a few years back. So.
What was your stock price when you got it?
Yeah, when I came.
I'm sorry, what was the question again?
So what was the stock price
Oh,
when you got here? I came into the company was struggling, so we divested out of gold and platinum, palladium, and got focused and started to specialize on a property that we had with some potential. But we bottomed out 2012, early 2013, we're around 3.5, 4 cents. And we hit a high of 85 cents this past spring, we're at 40 now. So if you look at the charts, thank you for that. You look at the charts, a real nice staircase that led up to the high of 85. So cautious but confident approach. We've got a lithium bank there. And the beauty with such a nice deposit is, you know, you can go in any direction with it. And again, our family's the largest shareholder in the company, so we got to do what's right for our shareholders, including ourselves. And it's always about timing and making sure we get the right timing and not give that lithium bank away. But we're working on a real world-class area, and it's a regional play as well. So we've got quite a land position and a new discovery that was announced 2 days ago. So we will continue to build the staircase and do what's right for the shareholders at the right time with the right people. And we have a real strong group and a great company, and what's now becoming a world-class asset. So.
And I know some of you folks in here over the last few years actually were taking part in one of the private placements too that you did a while back, Trevor, so I'm sure those of you that did it are pretty darn happy right now.
Yeah, we've had great support and lots of really good shareholders from the area, so
Okay.
it's been great.
Good. Bernie, I got a quick question about what the reaction is so far, to the extent that there is much of one in Canada, with any possibilities of companies like yours, or yours specifically, starting to have more collaborations in the U.S. now that we do not have a former Alabama senator named Jeff Sessions as Attorney General.
I think it's, that's a still a difficult crystal ball to possess, to know when things might change, enough in the U.S. that it will create opportunities for companies like ours. A bit of a clarification for those in the room, there's actual particular restrictions. So apart from the fact that cannabis is federally illegal in the United States, despite the various states that have legalized it, that international border is a clear no-no as far as being able to ship product across the, from Canada or anywhere else into the United States. There's another issue and variable as well, which is that the TSX and the TSX Venture actually do not allow companies listed on those exchanges to own assets in the U.S. Whereas the Canadian Securities Exchange, the CSE, does allow it. So there are some U.S.-based companies, some companies with assets, growing assets in the U.S. that are listed in Canada. But in general, the belief is that it's all going to evolve. Who knows what the timing will be, and there will be a big opportunity. And by virtue of these strict laws in the United States, you've enabled Canada to in at least one sector, have a substantial superiority over, or a greater advancement, let's say, in their progress and learning what it takes to be able to scale up the growing and to create products and go through a really high standard of quality assurance and so on. So the Canadian companies are really well positioned to move internationally and into the United States when that opportunity does come.
Neat. And as I commented yesterday, what is nice about that particular aspect of things is that for U.S. investors, and of course there's a much larger market of retail investors here than in Canada, 10 times the population more or less, it's really brought into people's vocabulary and consciousness the fact that American investors can easily buy Canadian stocks, and so that benefits not only the market penetration for cannabis, but everything else. Dan, did you have your hand up?
Well, I want to address a couple things.
Sure.
As far as the, I've been investing in this for quite a while, and it was very difficult 15 years ago, and now it's gotten a lot easier with these 5 other symbols, even though, for example, a fear that actually physically in the U.S., you can still buy,
Right.
There's security, 5 other symbol. We very easily have many platforms. But as far as the cannabis issue, there are many hurdles in the United States. One of them is the fact that many workers who apply for prospective employees have to undergo drug screening for many companies. And these always includes testing for cannabis-related use. So, and there are plenty that become passing that direction. Number 2, truckers are also obligated to undergo these drug screenings. And so, if cannabis shows up on their, on their urine testing, then they fail the test. So there are quite a few hurdles that need to be, overcome before it really becomes feasible in the U.S. to legalize.
I don't know if everybody heard that, but the point was that there's drug testing, for example, in workers, and so therefore there's hurdles as far as the adoption or the market really growing for cannabis in the U.S. Or the ease of people being able to consume it. And that's a fair point, and that's a good point, and I think it's an exciting point, because what we have is an industry that's already huge. It's primarily illegal, but it's huge, and it's being legalized, and yet you have all these hurdles and steps that still have to be undertaken. That spells opportunity, because there's a huge industry today already. So what happens when you start to remove some of those different steps, or there's more knowledge around them? So with respect to drug testing, for example, it's an interesting challenge, because alcohol basically leaves your body within 24 hours. There's very few markers of it after that time frame. cannabis can stay in your bloodstream for, I've heard different numbers, but let's call it 30 days or 24 days, whatever the number is. The fact is that though that remnant that is there doesn't mean in any way, shape, or form that somebody is actually intoxicated. And that's the key thing, it's one thing to have a presence of something, it's another thing to be intoxicated. So if you're intoxicated, yeah, you probably shouldn't be working, you probably shouldn't be driving 70 down Route 66. And the measurements are going to become better, the way to measure intoxications are going to become better. There's a learning curve there, and with the legal industry, there's a bigger reason and a better opportunity to create the resources to do those things and drive those kinds of standards and have appropriate measurements. But it's going to shift and change, and reality is right now we lump everything as cannabis. But if you remember me speaking about it yesterday, out of the almost 150 cannabinoids in the plant, only one of them makes you high. Only one of them is psychoactive, that's THC. So the question is, if there's a little bit of THC, but it's not a significant amount, and the main component of the version, the strain you're using is CBD, should that worker be treated the same if they're using CBD for pain versus somebody who's actually using it to get high? So there's an opportunity, that's the bottom line, it's going to grow.
I just love the company that drug tests us on a regular basis, random, and they happen, and they are human resources, they go to emergency meetings about people who have prescriptions, so they have to change that. Just like if you're on an opiate, you have a prescription, they're going to look at that different. So that is, they're looking at it.
Well, I'm sure as things evolve with the industry, you're going to come up with better ways to differentiate whether someone is legitimately on a prescribed product or is just a toker in a place where you can't do that.
This is a multinational company that is looking at it already, so.
Yeah.
But Big Pharma is going to fight this as long as they can.
Well, Big Pharma is going to fight it, but the toothpaste has come out of the tube to a fair extent, and I don't think they're going to be able to put it back in it. So the quest is going to be, correct me if I'm wrong, Bernie, they're going to look at taxation, regulation, a whole regimen of that. You cannot put this genie back in the bottle now. There's too much critical mass is being reached.
Somewhat related to family, private business, drug and alcohol policy, where there's safety related, despite the fact that legalization has occurred in Canada. I spoke to legal in the family business with regards to that. That company, private company, still has a zero tolerance policy because of the fact that trucks on the road, explosives involved, with the exception, of course, where there's specific prescriptions. But despite the legalization, our legal feels very strongly that still can have situations where it's safety related and have a zero tolerance policy. So,
Good point.
yeah. So
You don't want somebody handling explosives that has pretty much anything. I can see.
Yeah, I'm thinking trucks is in the same light. I suspect there'll be some challenges down the road. For now, it hasn't changed actual policies with regards to safety. And again, our in-house legal feels very strongly that that'll stand up in that case. So.
Yeah. Jim, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I would just mention to support an associate down here that, mankind has used marijuana for 5,000 years. And when marijuana really started to crank up quietly in the 50s and then into the 60s and then the 50s, the Europeans started to study marijuana as a drug. The Americans put everyone in jail. So that is what is unbundling. Whether it is 2 years or 10 years, I don't know, but it is unbundling. And the life science approach, there's always going to be people getting high. I have a kid that's 26 that's still in college. But the life science approach to this as a drug is very interesting, and there are a lot of hurdles and a lot of things to unbundle. It is challenging right now, though.
Well, that's a good point. The United States of America has about 5% of the Earth's population, and we have 25% of the Earth's prisoners. We imprison people at a greater rate than Fidel Castro ever did, that China does, or pretty much anybody else. And so marijuana has been a great boon because of what Jim just pointed out for the law enforcement growth industry for a lot of years. And that culture is starting to finally slowly change. We also use 25% of the Earth's energy, even though we have just 5% of the population. Chiefly that is in the form, of course, of oil and coal and gas and so forth. And as a few of us were talking last night, that is something that has been foisted on America to be overconsumptive because it justifies more and more credit being shoved down the throats of energy companies to produce more and more oil and gas so that we can buy more stuff and have bigger houses and use more of their energy, and it becomes this vicious circle. So, just in a way that cannabis has had to slug its way through that, Peter, doesn't the nuclear industry have that same hurdle that it is trying to overcome right now, where for so long we've been so completely dependent on fossil fuels? We're gonna stay dependent on them to a great extent for a long time, but where there is some reason for nuclear power to have a greater role, isn't that been an impediment, that there is such a vested interest on the part of oil and gas that it's fought that?
Well, I think in the 60s, every scientist out there agreed that nuclear power is a very clean way to operate and move forward. And in the 70s, we'd seen this complete build out of nuclear power plants in Japan, which allowed Japan to be a great industrial nation. And then we had 3 Mile Island, which sort of gave everybody a shock. Most people don't realize that 3 Mile Island had 4 reactors. They shut one down and the other 3 have been running ever since that time at very low cost, providing tremendous amounts of energy on the east coast of the US. But the story I was told is a lot of the oil companies supported the opposition of nuclear power because they wanted to sell oil. And we're seeing the consequence of burning massive amounts of oil and producing a lot of electricity from burning coal. You've all seen the photographs of China with a lot of smog. I've been there, I've seen it. It causes a huge number of health problems. And the Chinese government decided they were going to clean up a lot of that. They're building huge solar networks, they're building huge wind farms, they're building huge hydro dams, but they also recognize that about 30 or 40% of their energy should come from nuclear because it doesn't put any CO2 in the area. It's easily locatable to places where you have huge energy demands, and it's inexpensive. It's inexpensive. It's 37 to 10 to 12 cents a kilowatt hour versus windmills, which have a lot of maintenance issues and generally are accepted to be in the 30 to 50 cents a kilowatt hour. So you want to pay 10 times your cost for electricity? Yeah, there's a trade-off. 20% of the lights in this room run by nuclear energy here in the US. Similar about 22% in Canada. But there are 36 nuclear power plants that were put on the drawing board back 6 years ago in the US. There are 5 being built right now. There are 4,000 people working down in Carolina working on nuclear power plants. All they are a bunch of concrete and some steel, big concrete containment shell. People are starting to get more and more facts out there. Chernobyl didn't have a containment shell. That's why it's not like a 3 Mile Island event. Nothing was contained in that. The Japanese reactors that they've been studying for the last little while, 50 of them were turned off, but 30 of them are going to be turned back on again because they satisfy all the requirements. The ones that are on major structures or unprotected from tidal waves, no, they're not going to turn on. But on the ones that are further back, they produce a tremendous amount of value for the Japanese economy, and the Chinese looking at that. 34 other countries in the world are looking at that. This build out is happening because it's clean, it's inexpensive. So I looked at that 10 years ago, my board got together and we said, let's go find some uranium. It happens to be the highest grade uraniums in the Athabasca Basin on our back doorstep. Let's go find that, because how on earth are we going to fill these nuclear reactors with fuel when we only have just enough to supply the existing ones? We're maybe going to see 1,000 reactors in China. We're only 400 sort of operating in the world today. So I see a tremendous growth in nuclear power because environmentally we can't do anything else. We can't continue to use the heat value of coal. We're going to use the chemical value of coal or oil or anything else. It's
McArthur River would go back on stream?
Cameco says that they're not putting it back on stream until they get a satisfactory return on their money. The current uranium price is $30, just on $30 a pound. Cameco has a cash cost of $18 a pound. They have an all-in cash cost of $31 a pound. So today it's not going to work. But I know they have led contracts in the past at $48 to $55 to $60 a pound. And I think they're waiting for those $48 to $50 a pound prices. And I think there's a general consensus right throughout the world that to turn on that last reactor, you're going to need uranium somewhere in the $65 to $85 a pound. So it's a trade-off. Will Cameco write a contract at $55 a pound in the next 3 months? Maybe they will. But once they do that, everyone gets a contract at $55.
You know, there's this giant game, for those of you that follow this sector, there's been this giant game of chicken between the utilities on the one hand, chiefly here in the US, and the uranium producers, because they're trying to squeeze as low a price as they can for future contracts. And the uranium producers finally, led by Cameco, led by Kazakhstan state company, have said, no, we're not going to give it away anymore. The time is running out for the utilities, because if it were not for the fact that in foreign countries you have such a massive build-out of nuclear power capacity, they would have the upper hand. But everybody knows, and everybody has seen the charts, for as these reactors come online in India, China, and elsewhere, that what the need for uranium is going to be, and it's not there right now. So the U.S. utilities are fighting a losing battle, and time is running out. They're trying right now to block this Section 232 petition. How many of you know about that? It was filed in January. Nobody? Under the same statute as the aluminum and steel and other tariffs have been talked about now being implemented by the Trump administration, Section 232 is a provision where energy fuels and UR Energy, back in January, filed this petition with the Commerce Department, basically pointed out the statistic that even though 20%, as Peter pointed out, of all of our electric needs in this country are met by nuclear power, we get 4% of the uranium in this country to feed those reactors. The other 96% comes from Canada, Russia, Kazakhstan, and so forth. And so they're saying that's a national security issue, it's an economic issue, we've got uranium here, why aren't we using it, and so forth. So there's been some optimism that eventually there's going to be some move in that direction, although the utility companies themselves are fighting it, because just like all of the U.S. corporations, when it comes to anything, you know, that's why they go to foreign countries and get cheap labor. It's cheaper than in the U.S. Well, they have been getting cheap uranium elsewhere. But that's about to end, because Kazakhstan won't put up with it any longer either. So very, very interesting bull market that is taking shape for uranium. And as I commented yesterday, it looks to me as though it's a favorable place, regardless of what the overall markets do. We're going to wrap this up in a minute. Any other questions before I go down the line and have the gentlemen that haven't had as many questions yet? I want them to have a parting shot. Anything else burning in your minds?
You know, the real estate, is it Josh?
Yeah.
What geographies are you investing in, and can you give us a little more color in terms of what kind of real estate, residential, commercial, office buildings, farmland?
Absolutely. So for the first part, for markets, we love very pro-business, high population growth markets. Markets like Texas and Tennessee right now have been very good for us, because there's areas we can go in that haven't overappreciated, like a Chicago or like a Dallas or a Houston, but more on the west side of Texas, or Nashville, Memphis area in Tennessee. We can still get affordable prices today. So when you buy, you're making a great cash flow, and you've got a state that's very business friendly. For our managers, it makes it very easy for them to do their job and keep this easy for you. No state income tax is a huge boom that's driving a lot more population that way. We're seeing California population decline, and Texas and Tennessee continue to grow. So those are the types of pieces we like to piggyback on, and when we do our research. renters, whereas you get less businesses and those stay vacant. So for us, it's about putting our clients in a position where they can weather any storm, because they're providing a roof over someone's head first and foremost and making an income, and all the other pieces of the equation are really the long-term gains are gonna be the cherry on top at the end of the day.
One of the things I commented to someone the other day, when I left home, I flew out of Daytona, I'm going into Charlotte, and I'm seeing almost every vacant piece of property as we were coming down to get ready to land in Charlotte. I mean, there's stuff popping up every place. A week and a half before that, I'm back where I grew up in upstate New York, and it's kind of the opposite story. It's really remarkable, the difference in real estate markets. You've got demographics and economics both that are favoring the southeast, a lot of the southern part of the country, the Rust Belt areas. You know more about this than I would, Josh, but I lived up here for a while before I moved to Florida. I think one of the worst possible investments you can make right now, correct me if I'm wrong, is a big mansion out in the Chicago suburbs, because the kids are grown up and gone, the economy is stagnant around here. Who the hell wants to buy those things?
Absolutely, and you gotta look at the bigger picture too, what's going on with taxes and who's in office. That's one of the things, whether you're blue or red, we like Texas because it's very pro-business. They keep the taxes low, they're friendly to businesses, and that's what causes population growth. It keeps your property taxes low, which keeps your ROI high. So we are not doing anything in the Chicagoland area for those reasons right now.
Good point. Real quick, I want to highlight a few of these other guys, and then we might have a last question. Ross Orr and I have known each other for a little while now at BacTech, and I talked earlier about how a lot of times investment ideas come out of social media, they come out of what's on the news and stuff like that. A major issue in the world, especially in developing nations, has to do with dirty mining. But it's not Newmont, it's not Kinross, it's not BHP, it's people going out trying to eke out a subsistence off of the land. It's what's called artisanal mining. And in many of these countries, you've got massive environmental problems there. You've got people who are sick or dying from arsenic, from mercury, from all kinds of things. And a lot of you know that I was kind of a first mover in Ecuador with a couple of companies. I've got several Ecuador-related companies on my list right now. It is the biggest story in mining in the world. It's literally, this is just not hyperbole, this is a once-in-a-lifetime investment opportunity for the one part of the Andes Mountains that has not been developed to be developed in the coming several years, and there's going to be a lot of money made down there. But at the same time, the new president, Moreno, who's been in office a little over a year now, has surprised a lot of people in a positive sense with how he's accelerating a lot of the development of the mining industry. At the same time, for numerous reasons, he's under a lot of pressure to clean up messes in that country. Tell us about the one in Ponce Enriquez.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, it's a mess. I mean, you've got 92 different tailings sitting 1,000 meters above the city of Ponce Enriquez down below. The reality is that we approach most of our projects through the government first. I was saying to Peter earlier that every politician wants a gold star. So the question was, well, do you have problems with permitting? No, because we're providing a solution. We're not digging a hole in the ground. We're filling it back in again. So the permitting process is streamlined. You have support from the government to do stuff, and the local politicians love us. I've yet to sit down at any meeting in a community situation where somebody gets up and argues with what we're trying to do. You can't. The status quo is not what they want. They want cleaner living conditions. They don't want mercury in their water. They don't want arsenic in their backyard. So I think that's our mandate now, is to continue, whenever we go into a new country, it's the government first. Because having them put their arm around your shoulder makes life a lot easier. Really, that's the reality.
Okay, great. I'm going to be going down to Ecuador the first part of December, so you might be able to be down there during part of that time yourself. I got a lot of fun stuff going on.
I want to take you out to Ponce Enriquez and show you the mess.
As long as you don't make me clean it up, that's your job. Paul, I wanted to ask you a question that I had to come in and out during your presentation. I didn't get all of it last night. I wanted to ask you this anyway. But for those of you that missed Paul McKenzie yesterday, NexOptic has just rolled out a prototype of a sports optics product that I think in some ways could defeat the GoPro as far as its utility and how popular it might be. That's in the consumer market. It'll be interesting to watch that move along. But what I'm interested in getting a little bit more color on is why you brought Mr. Braun onto the team and what applications your optical technology and patents might have beyond the consumer market for more strategic other areas.
Sure, well, yeah, thanks, Chris. So, yeah, just to reiterate what Chris mentioned, yeah, it's a binocular product, a sport optic product. It's binoculars being Imagin. It's a complete revolutionary shift on how binoculars haven't changed fundamentally since they were initially created. They've got elongated lens stacks. You've got to hold them right up to your eye. If I'm looking at something on a distant mountaintop and I want to pass it over to this gentleman to see what I focus in on, it's not an easy translation. And what you were looking at is quickly out of your sights. And your reference to GoPro, we think it's going to have more appeal, potentially. I think so, very strongly it'll have more appeal to GoPro, because GoPro is a learning curve. It's video footage. After you take it, then you've got to work to splice it and edit it and create something. A lot of times when people buy a GoPro, they're excited about it, the product, for some period of time, but then it ends up sitting in the drawer. And when they're going on an adventure, an excursion, on a trip, on a hike, in a kayak, they stop taking it. And with our product, binoculars are used for two purposes. One is to enhance your experience, so you can see further if you're whale watching, if you're hiking, if you're at a sporting event, if you're at a stadium. And the other reason we use binoculars is for decision-making purposes. So I'm a boater, and I know every boat I've ever been on over 26 feet or 25 feet has a pair of binoculars on them. And most people have had binoculars in their homes, whether they were left, passed down from their father or their grandfather or something like that. And our product is a much condensed lens stack. It's digital. It's a digital screen. It's high resolution. It includes video recording and encrypted artificial intelligence, ability to take photographs, to share the data. It's quite a remarkable shift. So to your point on Bobby Braun, Bobby Braun joined our board in June of this year. He is a former chief technologist for NASA. He spent 12 years in that position. Remarkable individual. Everything that NASA ever landed on the moon, actually, he was integral in. Really interesting guy to spend time with. Very calm. As you can imagine, these are pretty complex things and massive budgets, and there's a lot on the line. And so he's a brilliant scientist, very calm demeanor that I think has allowed him to have the compliments he's achieved. He's now the Dean of Engineering and Applied Science at CU Boulder. And our technology is really not going to, the optical industry remains one of the fastest growing industries in the world. It's 20% growth annually. And a common thread, there's a lot of common threads between all the gentlemen here and the companies they represent. But one is, for sure, is optics. It's something we use every day. So it doesn't stop. I mean, and it doesn't stop on the planet. Orbiting satellites and drone technology and orbiting telescope systems and so forth. It doesn't stop. And the autonomous vehicle market is critical, sophisticated, not only in the lens systems that they use, but also in the efficiency of them, but also in the artificial intelligence and the ability to comprehend the data and make decisions based instantaneously to avoid crashes, which is what the autonomous vehicle industry is all about. So it's to answer your question, Chris, it's endless. I mean, the optics industry is not going to stop, and I think the growth in it is not going to stop.
If you folks have not done it yet, you need to go to NexOptic's website and look at the different photographs. You had one of the moon, I think, a typical telescope, you have one through your lens, and it's remarkable. It's remarkable what you're gonna see. I mean, this is technology like amazing. I learned an awful lot about how these things are moving on. You know, another thing I learned a lot, one second, Dan. Another thing I learned a lot about, because I want to ask her a question that I really had no knowledge of. I mean, I thought helium was for kids' balloon parties, or if I get drunk and I want to get on YouTube, I suck in some helium first and then video myself and put that all out on the internet. I had no idea that helium was used for
You can
something.
still do that.
Well, I can still do that, that's true. But on my way down here, literally on the highway the other day, I was driving from my daughters in St. Paul down here, and I passed a big truck that had, I don't know, a couple dozen long cylinders of helium on it. And, well, I mean, that's a hell of a big party, or a hell of a big drunk party. People are gonna do their selfies with the helium afterwards and put it on YouTube. But I had no idea the technological applications for that now. What is the, I guess for lack of a better way to ask it, what is the realistic demand going forward from, just say, the tech industry?
Helium's going up.
Well, helium what?
Helium's going up.
I've seen balloons, yeah, helium balloons go up.
The answer to your question is really very open-ended.
Okay.
And really, I would say it defies projections. The reason is this: every day new uses for helium are discovered, new applications are coming to the fore. You know, whether it's in semiconductors, whether it's in big data centers where they're putting helium in the hard drives of all the computers, whether it's in barcode readers in supermarkets. Every time you walk in a supermarket, the barcode reader, there's helium in that. MRIs are very prevalent here in the U.S., of course. It's part of everyday medical diagnostics.
I gotta be like Johnny Carson. I did not know that.
No?
No,
Well, now you know it.
In a barcode reader.
Yeah, that's right. It's like, the number of uses are expanding. It's used in industry for leak detection in all kinds of systems that are supposed to be leak-proof, because this helium atom is tiny, it's very lightweight, and as a result, wherever you put it, it wants to escape into the atmosphere. So if you have a complex manufacturing system with pipes, if you insert helium, the helium will find the holes and try to escape. So to go back to the question, there are estimates that helium demand is growing 6 to 7% a year, but the reality is there is a worldwide shortage right now, and that shortage is actually being projected to get worse, because the U.S. National Helium Reserve, which had been the largest single seller of helium into the world market for 5 decades, announced that they, after the most recent sale, would be canceling all future auctions. They will be out of the market. Helium has now been declared a strategic commodity by the U.S. government, and what little helium is left in the National Reserve, they're going to retain it for national defense purposes and strategic government purposes. You can imagine they need to have quite a lot for all the advanced computer systems that the government operates, for all of the rocket programs, potential new space programs. I think most of us have a vague sense that helium has been used in the space race in the 60s and 70s to cool all the spacecraft and all of the rockets associated with that. So it has a lot of military and spacecraft applications. Google recently came up with a new program called Project Loon. They are trying to bring the internet around the globe now, so Sahara Desert on a camel, you can get an internet connection. And the way they're doing this is with a series of literally hundreds of balloons, all filled with helium, that are at the very top of the atmosphere, encircling the globe on a continuous basis, emitting Wi-Fi signals everywhere. I never would have imagined 5 years ago, the supermarket barcode readers are going to have helium, that Netflix uses helium every time it streams a video. And these kinds of things have all just come up. And I think it's fair to say that right now, the lack of supply is actually suppressing demand for new applications. People are concerned. We don't want to develop a whole new technology that relies on helium, and we may not even be able to get it. So I think that this is the opportunity that I saw a year and a half ago when I said to my people, we need to get into helium. We need to be aggressive. We need to be an early mover. And we need to go to the best location in the world where they've been producing helium. We don't want to try and find a needle in a haystack somewhere in the North Woods where they've never had helium. There's an old saying that gold miners like to use, which is the best place to find gold is where they've already found gold. So having worked in that area for 10 years, I said, you know what? Let's not try to reinvent the wheel and be too creative. Let's go to the best basin in the world for helium in a secure, politically secure jurisdiction. Let's see if we can't find some great new targets there. And we've been very successful identifying 6 new areas within this one basin that look like they could pose potentially world-class helium reservoirs. So that's it. And we think if we discover more helium, there will be more applications developed, things that we haven't even considered. For example, energy creation, just to name one. Helium is 25% of the sun. The other 75%, for the most part, is hydrogen. Scientists do not understand yet what role the helium atom plays in energy creation, but it clearly is involved. And scientists are looking at that now. I think that the game is just beginning with helium. You know, generally in the financial markets, the early bird gets the worm. The early movers are the people who make the most money when it comes to new technologies. And I think that we're one of the few public companies in the helium space, and we think we're the best positioned of all the smaller companies because of where we are. So I think it's an interesting times. Helium prices have skyrocketed. One investor asked me an interesting question this morning, which was, why don't you guys enter into an output deal? There must be big companies on the distribution side that need helium supplies in this shortage. And I said, well, that's absolutely true. We've been contacted by 5 different companies who want to do output deals. The problem is these guys all want to lock in prices that we think are unacceptably low. We think that the helium crisis is going to only get worse because of scientific advances, which create the need for more helium and this lack of supply. So I think it's a great opportunity, and I've spent my career looking for opportunities to invest where I can make 10, 20, 50, 100 times my money. And we've successfully had 3 companies that did that, where investments in pennies became worth dollars 3 to 5 years later. And I believe we got a good shot for that here with Desert Mountain Energy.
Well, gentlemen, it's been informative to say the least. I mean, as I said a few minutes ago, you've got a great diversity of companies and opportunities and stories here. You need to check them all out, get serious about them. We're gonna adjourn formally right now, but if any of you in the group have any lingering questions, of course, you can find any of these guys will be around here for a little while. So thank you for coming in this morning.